Where are you off to, love?
I'm off downtown.
What are you going downtown for?
I've got to get a social security number.
Why have you got to get a social security number?
Because I want to join the doctor's surgery, and apparently I need a social security number.
Oh, okay. Well, don't be long.
Okay.
Bye.
See you in a bit.
How'd you get on, love?
Got to do it online, ain't Newsflash, Shelley. Who would believe Portugal is not perfect?
No, I don't believe you.
No, I know. So, well, welcome back to the channel. Thanks for joining us. That leads us perfectly onto this week's video, which is the good,
The bad
and the ugly
of living in Portugal. So, talking about that as a subject header, we've not had the best week, and I really feel like we're walking the walk this week on some of the. Is that right?
We're living this video this week, yeah.
We're living the video this week.
Yeah.
So I had a bit of a medical emergency, so we've had to road test the health system. That's probably a whole video, I think, in itself.
Yeah, absolutely.
We've had a few problems in our house. They are non-budgeted problems that we've had, and yeah, it's just sort of money starts piling up, doesn't it, when you've got those sort of things going on. And getting things done has been a bit of a challenge, hasn't it?
Yeah.
This week. So yeah, we definitely feel like we're speaking from experience on some of those things. So at the end of this video, we're going to give you our top tips for how to manage your life in Portugal with all its wonderful and not so good things.
Additionally, we have had already a lot of questions from you guys regarding living, moving to Portugal, etc., etc. So with that in mind, we are going to do a Q&A video coming up. Obviously, to make that worthwhile for everyone, we'll get as many questions in as possible. So please drop your questions in the comments on this video. Send it to us on the website, to email or Instagram, whatever works for you. Send us your questions, and we will try and include as many as possible in that video when we do that soon, okay?
And we'll answer them all, one way or another. Okay, so let's go on to this week's video, but first a little context. Okay, so let's go through our thoughts on this week's subject. But first, as always, a little context. And that is that this is our opinion of the key things under each of those categories, the good, the bad, and the ugly of living in Portugal. It is not an exhaustive list. It is just what we've experienced and what we hear other immigrants experiencing. I moderate on some of the biggest Facebook groups for moving to Portugal, so I have a very good idea of the kind of things that get talked about. So that's important. Another context that's important is there's no perfect country.
No.
In fact, every country in this world has the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Yeah.
And if you have found the perfect country to live in,
let us know.
Let us know in the comments,
We'll
because
move there.
we'd love to move there. So I think that's a really important context as well. And finally, we are not trying to scare you, okay? For everything that's not so good, we will give you a mitigation and a top tip to make sure that those things don't impact your enjoyment of living in Portugal. So that's really important. We're not here to try and scare you, but we do work on giving people a true, honest picture of what it's like to live here. Okay, so let's get on to it.
Okay.
So first of all, on the good list, the people. Without a shadow of a doubt, everyone I speak to, when you ask them what's the best thing about Portugal, 100%, most of the time, there's probably 1% that don't. I should say that. But, you know, there's good, bad and ugly people everywhere, isn't
Of course,
there?
yeah,
So
yeah,
that's
yeah.
life. But the people of Portugal, they are tolerant, they are welcoming, they are helpful, they are kind. We've had nothing but a positive experience.
No.
So that's definitely for us a really, really big thing.
Absolutely.
Secondly, safety. Everyone mentions how Portugal is a safe place to live. Now, that isn't to say that there are parts of Porto I definitely wouldn't walk through at night. I think with every situation, you obviously have to apply common sense. But overall, it's a very safe country, and that there's no price really, is there?
You feel safe. Everywhere you go, whatever you do, pretty much you feel safe. Yeah.
We've done all sorts of festivals and New Year's Eve in Porto, and we've always felt safe. Thirdly, the cost of living. So we did a video, I'll link it up here, on the cost of living over here. And whilst we need to be conscious that the cost of living is rising, there's no doubt about that. The cost of housing and some of the difficulties that the Portuguese face, there is no doubt that those things are in play. But overall, there is a good cost of living in this country.
So moving on from that, slightly different, we talk about the variety that you see in the landscape here in Portugal. And if you drive from the top of the country down to the bottom of the country, you're going to see a little bit of everything. And if you're wavering over towards the coast, so you can come inland towards the mountain ranges, and then you've got everything in between. It truly is a stunning, beautiful country to look at, and and I mean, I'm a motorcyclist, and I will never get to the end of Portugal because there's so much to see. That kind of ties in a little bit with all that countryside, mountains, etc. The slow pace of life in Portugal. Its culture means that it has absolutely retained that kind of, not manhã, but certainly slow pace, or a manhã, I should say in Portuguese. That slow pace. So nothing is rushed. You can take your time, and you don't feel that pressure. And what's really interesting, I was in the UK last week, and I said to Shelley when I got back, my God, it's just everything is full on. It's mad, it's crazy, and everything. Everyone wants to get everywhere so fast, get it done.
Yeah.
And obviously, Portugal is the antidote to that in our experience, for sure.
And it's a good thing.
Yeah, no, absolutely,
it's
a very
really
good thing.
Yeah. We've definitely chilled out more since we've been here, so it's a huge thing.
Yeah.
So healthcare is on the good list, because no matter what you think of it, I have had a very positive experience this week, And there is no doubt Portugal's healthcare is free, pretty much. And any country that offers free healthcare, that is a huge bonus. And also it's a mix of private and public healthcare. So it's a really good system where you can use the best of both worlds. So for us, we think healthcare is a real positive.
Absolutely, yeah. Leading on from that, well, not leading on, but certainly roads, leading on from what I was talking about before.
Roads, healthcare.
I'm not your healthcare roads, yeah. Okay. So roads, I'm talking generally here, because if you come across from Spain, and this is not to say anything bad about the Spanish roads, because they're pretty good as well, but when you come in from Spain, you cross over into Portugal, you notice the difference. When you're on the motorways, they are absolutely fantastic, almost without exception. Some fantastic main arterial roads in Portugal, which you can whiz up and down. And they are in really good condition. A lot of them are toll roads, so that helps to maintain them. But generally speaking, they are fantastic. Obviously, you can always find a crappy road somewhere, but generally speaking, the roads here, in comparison to other places, compared to the UK, definitely are very, very good. Yes. Linking to that, we've got the weather as well. Now, obviously, people think of Portugal and they think, oh, it's sunshine all year round. But I put this down as a positive. It is a seasonal country. Yeah. Obviously, the further south you go, the warmer it is throughout the year. But generally speaking, we get 4 good seasons in the year.
Proper seasons.
Proper seasons. And even the winter, and we've obviously acclimatised now.
Yeah.
When the winter comes, it's like 2 months long, and we're like, "Oh my God, it's so cold," and it's not.
Molto frio.
It's not, and obviously you get that really long spring, summer, and autumn, which is absolutely delicious. But the weather, generally speaking, it's got a really nice mix, and I wouldn't want it hot.
No.
All year round.
No, that would
be too much. Yeah.
And the dogs like seasons as well.
Yeah.
And overall, it's much warmer than the UK. So I think even today we looked, didn't we? And it's like 10 degrees. Warmer.
At least.
But we're
10
still
degrees.
in winter here.
Yeah.
So it is going to be cold. But but it isn't Florida.
No.
I think some people think it is. It's definitely not.
Lastly, on our list of the good is Portugal's location in Europe. Now, obviously, it is attached to the mainland, which means that anywhere on mainland Europe is accessible from Portugal. Jump in your car, whatever, and off you go. Because it's the Mediterranean, attached to the Mediterranean, the Atlantic is fantastic for that. We're right next to Spain. A good example is we can be in Spain in 2 hours.
We can.
From where we live. France, a little bit longer, but we see the Pyrenees and France as the gateway to the rest of Europe. But I'd say in a day we are there on that border. Very accessible. We have on mainland Europe, we have the southernmost and the westernmost tip of mainland Europe in Portugal. Which makes it a great location, I think, within Europe as well. So you get all the good stuff, but you're still attached to everything. So it's great.
Yeah, and you can drive to Madrid to get a flight anywhere, you know.
I mean,
it's like a few hours.
Point in case, Lisbon's 2.5 hours away. Madrid
is 3.
No, it's a bit more than 3.
Oh, is it?
I don't know how fast you're driving, but it's a bit more
than 3. My hairdresser told me.
No, Madrid, if you're driving to Madrid, it's probably about 5 to 6 hours from here.
That's not bad.
But you could do it in a day easily. Yeah, no problem.
Yeah.
Okay, so on to our second topic. And rather than call this bad, we're going to call this not so good. Less good. Because we wouldn't live here if it was bad, let's be honest. And it's not bad. But it's really important that we highlight some of these things that can be a little bit more challenging. And first one that we'll talk about is bureaucracy. Now, you may hear other people talk about the bureaucracy in Portugal and that it can be stifling. It really can be quite suffocating. And there are instances that we could probably talk about at great length where that is the case. So bureaucracy is something which is entrenched in the way the systems work here and the infrastructure in Portugal.
Lack of information.
Well, exactly. Lack of information, confusing information. And obviously, when you add to that, if you're not a fluent Portuguese speaker, that language barrier as well, then it can make it a very bureaucratic and quite a difficult process to deal with. And you've got to have a little bit of a strong constitution sometimes to deal with some of the things that you're faced with.
Yeah.
So bureaucracy high up on that list of the less good things here.
Yeah.
Yes.
Just like the comedy sketch.
Yes.
Actually, that's a true story that we recreated there.
Yeah, very much so.
That is a very good example of almost any immigrant process will look something like that. So secondly on this list is buying property or land. It is fraught with issues to buy property here, and that will probably be one of our next 2 videos. And you do need to be extremely careful.
Yeah.
One of the biggest things we notice from coming from the UK is that when you go to buy a property, everything is checked thoroughly. You get a lawyer or a solicitor, and that solicitor is there to protect you. That is not necessarily the case here in Portugal. And so when you go to purchase land, you have to make sure that you can't just sit back and let someone else take care of it for you. You need to do your own due diligence, you need to do your own checks, and we'll go into this in more detail in the future. But it is not a straightforward process. And it's not also a terrible process, but it's one where you need to have your eyes wide open when you're going into it, because it does not work the same way as your home country. And then likewise on that, there's a fair few cowboys around, isn't there? I don't mean the type with the horses. I mean, we call it cowboy builders. I don't know what you call them from where you are, but there are a lot of cowboys, builders, tradesmen, workmen. There are a lot of people that want to take money from you, and you'll never see them again. And it is a significant number. So whilst you will always only ever hear about the bad stuff, of course, there is a significant amount of it here. Now, to be honest with you, we watch a lot of American TV, and I see a lot of home improvement programs where they've come in after cowboy builders. So it's not exclusive to Portugal. I've had a cowboy builder in the UK. So look, we're not saying this is different to any other country, but it is something you need to be extremely careful of. And again, we'll probably cover this in another video.
The drivers. Let me talk about driving in Portugal. Now, before, I'm going to temper this with the reason we talk about driving is because there's cultural differences all over the world in terms of driving. And you depending on where you go, you're going to hear that the worst drivers are here, there, or whatever. But just to temper this, in Europe, the stats suggest that Portugal is the most dangerous place to drive. And there are some cultural differences, let's just say. I'm not going to criticise the driving in Portugal, but there are some cultural differences in terms of how they drive. And let's just say some of the manoeuvres that take place are probably less than safe, okay? And they can be quite intimidating. If you're a nervous driver, then tread carefully when it comes to driving. As a motorcyclist as well, I find I get a lot more respect on the motorcycle in Portugal than I do that if I'm driving a four-wheel vehicle. But there you go. Driving is certainly something which is less than perfect, let's just say. Yes.
That's your favourite.
Oh yeah. Okay, let's talk taxes. Probably could be a video on its own, but not one that we'd want to do, to be honest. So I'm going to say with taxes, let's keep this brief. Previously, there have been a couple of government-led incentives for people migrating from other countries into Portugal. I'm not going to go into detail on exactly what they are because I'm not an expert, but they've changed or they've ended, which means that from a tax perspective, it's not quite as attractive as it has been previously. So it's certainly one of the reasons it goes on the not so good list is because taxes can, on a tiered system, go up quite high in Portugal. So it is well worth checking out what that could be, because that might not be something that works for you.
Yeah, or very different to the country you've come from.
Exactly, yes, yeah. It could be very different or higher than the country you've come from, yeah. So, okay, leading on from that, we've got politics. Now, again, I'm not an expert on politics in Portugal. We pick up what we pick up around us and hear people talking about. But there, in recent times, in the last couple of years, there've been allegations of corruption within the government, which has led to one government leaving and another one coming in. But that has also led to the emergence of perhaps some more right-wing politics in Portugal as well, which seems to be gaining some support. And I'm not suggesting that there's anything wrong with that, but I think Portugal is probably reflecting where certainly everywhere in the Western world is politically at the moment, I would say. So not in turmoil, but certainly interesting, let's just say. Yes.
Pretty much like everywhere else in the world,
absolutely,
right?
yeah.
So, anyway, so finally, the last thing on our not so good list is animal welfare care. We've spoke about this before. Certainly if you come from most other European countries or Northern European countries and America, we're used to very high standards of animal care and welfare. And here it is a problem. And I think we said in our first or second video, country is changing and change is happening, and that's really brilliant. But you do need to be prepared to move here and see things that you will not like. For us living rurally, that's dogs chained up, that's dogs left out in all weathers on a chain, animals abandoned, cats going crazy like everywhere.
Hundreds of them,
feral cats, nobody dealing with it, the authorities not dealing with it. You know, there's 1,000 examples of it. And there are things that you're not going to like, and you need to, before you move here, see if that is something you can live with, because it's definitely something we've struggled with quite a lot. But we also realise that it is what it is, and things are improving, and so it's all about your mindset, which we'll come on to next. Okay, so on to the ugly. Bit of a red herring.
Yeah, do you think?
We don't have an ugly list, okay? No. There's nothing that we consider ugly. To be honest with you, anything on the not so good list could be ugly for you. And what's ugly for you might not be ugly for us. No. People can be ugly, situations can be ugly, tax regimes can be ugly, builders can be ugly. You know, there's a whole plethora of things that can go under that category. So we don't have an ugly category, but it is like about your attitude to things. So we play a game, don't we, called Yellow Mini. And if you see a yellow mini, it's amazing how you will then see yellow minis everywhere. And if your attitude is you're looking for the ugly somewhere, you will find it.
Yeah, you'll find
in
it.
any country
you don't have
in
to be
the
Portugal.
world. It doesn't have to be Portugal. No. Imagine how Portuguese people, when they immigrate to other countries, I'm pretty sure they'll find a lot of ugly. So yeah, it's a bit of a red herring, the ugly, but we just wanted to put that category in there.
Okay, so you have our thoughts on what's good and the not so good. But now let's move on to what we do about that.
Exactly.
What are our top tips?
Mitigation.
Mitigation indeed. So we've got 8 tips that we're going to give you now. And I'm going to kick off with number 1, which is about being honest with yourself about moving to Portugal. You do need an extra bit of patience that maybe you don't have where you exist at the moment. You need that in Portugal. You've got to understand that you are going to live possibly without some of your favourite foods or favourite items or favourite shops, whatever it may be. And you're going to live without things like Amazon 2-hour delivery and all that stuff. So you've got to be honest with yourself and say, is that going to work for me? Because if you cannot live without that, then perhaps you want to rethink whether this is a place you come to.
Yeah, definitely. And also, top tip number 2 is study the culture here. Instead of just looking at, oh yeah, where's the best place to live in Portugal and how do I move to Portugal? Actually study the culture and understand how people live and work here, because that's really important. Can you live with a 2-hour lunch break or a 3-hour lunch break every day when you want to get things done? Can you understand, if you're in business here or you're coming here to be in business, do you understand the business culture? It's really important to take that time out to learn those things. And we've had some of it we knew before, and some of it we've had to learn since we've been here. But sometimes people just bypass that. And culture, this is this country's culture, and we need to fit in. So it's important to understand it.
Absolutely. Okay, number 3 on our list is the language. A little bit of Portuguese goes a very, very long way. You may hear that there are a lot of English speaking people in Portugal, and that's certainly true of the cities, etc. But if you make an attempt to learn the language, whether that is going to be fluent or whatever, it doesn't matter. I think to make an attempt to learn the language is something that's going to be welcomed by the Portuguese people. And I believe that we should do it. We've certainly started that process, and it's an ongoing process. It's going to take us a while, but we will get there. But learning a bit of Portuguese, massively important.
Yeah. And your choice of location and where you live is really important as well. There are so many people, one of the biggest reasons that people leave the country is because they simply choose the wrong place to live. You know, so you need to think, if you currently live in the middle of a rural countryside, wherever you are, and you suddenly think, oh, I want to move to a city, I want to go to Lisbon, you know, you've really got to make sure that being in a city with all of its kind of, you know, problems of living in a city, you know, being in an apartment, being in a small apartment, having barking dogs on balconies, having lots of noise. There's a whole load of stuff that comes with living in a city. Are you really prepared for that? Likewise, if you've come from a large town or city and you have this dream that you want a quinta out in the middle of nowhere, be very careful where you choose your location, because there are a lot of locations in Portugal that are a little bit time forgotten, and they are not so used to immigrants and people moving here. And so if you're going to move to those very rural areas, you need to work very hard at observing culture and integration. You can't just sort of come in, get your 4x4, your quinta, flash your money around. That's not going to go down well. So really, really think through where you want to live. And I see a lot of advice on Facebook groups, and actually it is good advice. Rent first. Don't buy, because then you get a really good feel for somewhere. You might have thought you wanted to live by the sea, and actually you move to the sea and find you don't like the mist for 6 months of the year, or you don't like the cold water. A lot of people don't realise the water's really cold. So all of those things. So really be careful about your choice of location. It will make a big difference to your experience. Number 5, I think, be humble. You know, so let me give you a good example of that. I went to the doctors this week, and one of the receptionists, this is quite common, by the way, isn't it, in doctors' surgeries? One of the receptionists, she looked at me like I was an alien that had just landed from outer Earth.
That's not a Portuguese thing. I think that's just doctors'
that's not a
receptionists.
Portuguese thing. You know, that's a doctor's receptionist thing. Sorry to any doctor's receptionists that's watching. But, you know, I had disturbed her text message. And so she wasn't happy about that. But the point is, no matter how people treat me, I always act with humility, because I realise that I am the representative for every immigrant coming to Portugal. So I never lose my shit. Even when I really want to lose my shit, I don't. I always treat people the way I expect to be treated. And I think that's a good mantra for settling into a country, don't you?
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. Number 6 accept or go.
Yep.
I think if you've moved here, then there are going to be things that are going to be challenging. We've discussed that. And the tip here really is about accepting the way things are. If you're unable to accept the way things are, you're unlikely to be able to change them. Don't get bitter about it.
Yeah.
Don't put yourself in a bad place. The best suggestion I can say is if it is not for you,
quits.
yeah, call it quits, move on, find the next place. But it's just that going back to the being realistic and being, being patient, etc. But point 6 is about accept it the way it is, or move on.
Yeah, don't hang around hoping it will get better.
Because it won't. Okay, so leading on from that point 7, after we talk about acceptance, we talk about fitting in. And really it is your responsibility as a migrant to Portugal to fit in to the culture, to the quirks, to everything that makes Portugal wonderful, weird, whatever you want to call it. It's your job to fit in and change the way you are to fit in with that. Now, you can bring some of your own stuff with you, of course you can, and some of your own culture, of course. But this is Portugal, and you have to make an attempt to fit in to the Portuguese way.
Yeah, Portugal's not going to fit you.
No.
And sort of coming on to number 8, I think. Is it number 8?
Yeah, number 8,
I think it's
the last
number 8.
one, yeah.
So don't blame Portugal if it doesn't work out for you. As I say, I moderate on a lot of Facebook groups and I see a lot of bitter people who did not do their research properly, did not understand what they were coming into. They all thought it was a Forbes magazine paradise instead of doing proper research that told them all the good, the bad and the ugly, just like we've gone through. So if it isn't what you expected it to be, please don't blame Portugal for that. It's not their fault, it's your fault because you didn't do your homework properly. Or if you did and it just didn't work out, that's okay. But don't hate on Portugal for that. Don't bring your views and hate on other people that want to move here, because everyone's different and we all have different tolerances, don't we, of what we love and what we hate. Yeah. So that it would be, the final top tip. And then our final thing is 3 words, and that is tenacity, patience.
What's the third?
And tenacity. Some more tenacity.
Loads of tenacity.
Loads of tenacity. You know, if you have those qualities, you will do really well here. And as we said, none of these things are, massive problems. They're just things to be aware of. Okay, so we really hope that you enjoyed this week's video and that we haven't put you off.
No, definitely.
Portugal.
Yeah, I hope we haven't put you off.
If we have, that's good, right? But anyway, don't forget, we'll be doing a Q&A video in a few weeks' time. So any questions, leave them in the comments.
Do you know what? I think I'll just go and fill out that online form now, shall I?
You need to finish that.
Yeah, let's go.